Today is Thursday, July 27th, 2023, and I'm going to read 1 Kings chapter 16. I guess before I get into the video, I can just talk about a question I had last time. Nothing big or anything. In the previous chapter, and maybe in some chapters before that too, there's a lot of mention of other books. Oh, is it not written in so-and-so? And they'll mention some other book. And, it didn't stick out to me at the time, but I believe in the last chapter it mentioned Chronicles of Kings, and I guess I just wasn't paying attention to the word Chronicles, because First Chronicles and Second Chronicles are books of the Bible, so those are the books that I was referencing, and maybe in some cases they were referencing books that we don't have anymore, I'm not sure, but that does happen in the Bible, where they will reference things that aren't in the Bible anymore, but that one does have an explanation, and those books are still in the Bible today. Chronicles. So maybe that'll be worth looking at some point. Somebody else said too that in some versions there were just four kings books, and I'm just saying what I read in the comments, so all of this could be fact checked. Either Chronicles or Samuel would be lumped in with Kings. Now, I'm just repeating what I read in a comment, so I don't know exactly what's going on there. Anyways, 1 Kings chapter 16, let's read this. Then the word of the Lord came to Jehu, the son of Hanani, against Baasha, saying, oh man, so I am now in character land soup, where I feel like there's just 20 different names floating around, and I have a hard time keeping track of things. If I really wanted to follow this stuff, I think I would need to sit down and actually draw out some family trees and draw some historical timelines, which is why it's nice that there are so many details, and why it is nice that they say people's names and their relations and where they're from, and because if you actually do have the time to sit down and sketch this stuff out, it's there for you. But in just my casual readings of these things, I don't personally try to look for big picture things. That's just the way I am. For as much as I exalted thee out of the dust, and made thee prince over my people Israel, and thou hast walked in the way of Jeroboam, and hast made my people Israel to sin, to provoke me to anger with their sins, behold, I will take away the prosperity of Baasha, and the prosperity of his house, and I will make thy house like the house of Jeroboam the son of Nebat. Him that dieth in Baasha in the city shall the dogs eat, and him that dieth of his in the fields shall the fowls of the air eat. Now the rest of the acts of Baasha, and what he did, and his might, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Israel? Okay, so Chronicles here, this is exactly what I was mentioning earlier. Okay, so it's talking about Chronicles, most likely. I find it interesting. So this is just another thing to put out there. Maybe people will come in with the comments with some things to say. To me, it seems interesting that they're writing about things that have already been written about, and that people are like, oh yeah, we've already talked about that. Don't you know about that other stuff? So to me, that just brings up some questions of like, okay, well then what motivated the writing of first, if this stuff has already been written about before, what motivated the writing of First Kings, and why are we kind of running parallel timelines to something that's already been written about before? That would be a big question, a book report type thing to study. Why do we have these two parallel timelines going on, and what motivated the writing of each of these things, and to understand that overlap? Because just in my mind, it makes more sense to tell a story from A to B, and then somebody picks up where at B and then goes to C. But here, we have two parallel things going on. Does that make sense, what I'm asking? Verse 6. But Baasha slept with his fathers, and was buried in Tirzah, and Elah his son reigned in his stead. And also by the hand of the prophet Jehu, the son of Hanani, came the word of the Lord against Baasha and against his house, even for all the evil that he did in the sight of the Lord, in provoking him to anger with the work of his hands, and being like the house of Jeroboam, and because he killed him. I guess I'll just say here how often in the Bible it comes up where, I mean, just to take it back to the Ten Commandments, how often coveting happens, and, oh, that person's doing something, I want to do it too. And how still today that most people, like, this is something just growing up, I never felt connected to people that, like, look up to something like, oh, Green Day, that is my band. I love everything Green Day. I want to dress like them. I want to look like them. I want to be like that person. I've just never had that in me. And thank God for that, because it's not a good thing to have, but it's just not in my nature. But it really seems like so many people out there are just like that. They just have to, it's like they have trouble coming up with things from within. So they have to glob onto some external thing and be like, that's what I want. And they want it for themselves. Because that just seems like what constantly is happening. They look around at these other nations. Oh, I want that too. I want to follow their gods too. Okay. Verse 8, in the 26th year of Asa, king of Judah, began Elah, the son of Baasha, to reign over Israel in Tirzah 2 years. And his servant, Zimri, captain of half his chariots, conspired against him. Oh, conspiracy in the Bible. Happens a lot. And he was in Tirzah, drinking himself drunk in the house of Arza, steward of his house in Tirzah. And Zimri went in and smote him and killed him in the 27th year of Asa, king of Judah, and reigned in his stead. Wild times. Reminds me of what they tell us about the Wild West, what they tell us about ancient Greece or Rome, people coming in and stabbing someone in the back and usurping the throne. And it came to pass when he began to reign, as soon as he sat on his throne, that he slew all the house of Baasha. He left him not one that pisseth against a wall, neither of his kinsfolks, nor of his friends. Interesting way to say that they killed all the men, that he let nobody who pisseth on a wall. People are trying to say that pisseth is a Mandela effect of the Bible. I am very not okay with people claiming that the Bible is just randomly changing words. Certain words have changed. I just find it much more likely that there's things in the Bible that people were ignorant of for most of their life. Because let's face it, most people are not intense Bible scholars who are reading their Bible all the time, especially not the Old Testament. If all you do is just go to church every Sunday, you could spend an entire lifetime going to a church every Sunday. How much of the Bible are you reading? Like, if I just judged it off the church that I go to, not shaming or anything, but it's just an example of why going to church every Sunday is not enough. It's not enough, because if you base it off of stuff that's church, I don't know, you mostly get letters. You might hit some big features like the Ten Commandments and here and there in the Old Testament, but you're not scouring through. You absolutely do not go to church and they say, hey guys, we're reading through 1 Kings for the next month. Maybe that happens some places. That'd be cool. But, be the change that you want to see. If you feel like something's lacking, well, nobody's going to do it for you. So this is one of the reasons I like doing these videos, is because even when it comes to religious Christian, other religions don't matter to me. It's either Christian or it has nothing to do with me. Following Jesus, trying to understand the Bible, or I don't want any part of it. But the biggest problem I see is just it's too little. Our entire lives are supposed to be about this stuff. This is the pearl that we find and sell everything else and just hold on to it. My precious. Total tunnel vision for Jesus. But even religious things, it's like just the sprinkles on the top. It's nothing. It's very rarely the substance, the substantial, let's sit down, open page 1, read it. It almost always falls on the individual to I'm going to read the Gospels. I'm going to open up Matthew, page 1, and then flip to page 2, and then keep on going until I'm done. Almost always falls on the individual, but it's the way this place is. Okay. That's enough rambling. I really have the rambles in me these days. I don't know what it is. Oh, to finish my ramble, I don't think that the word pisseth has been supernaturally added to the Bible. I just think that people don't typically read their Bibles, so there's surprising things in there. Oh, wow, they were using that word way back then. Yep, I believe so. Thus did Zimri destroy all the house of Baasha, according to the word of the Lord, which he spake against Baasha by Jehu the prophet. For all the sins of Baasha and the sins of Elah his son, by which they sinned, and by which they made Israel to sin, in provoking the Lord God of Israel to anger with their vanities. Now the rest of the acts of Elah and all that he did, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Israel? In the 27th year of Asa king of Judah did Zimri reign 7 days in Tirzah, and the people were encamped against Gibbethon, which belonged to the Philistines. Wow, only ruled 7 days in Tirzah. And the people that were encamped heard say, Zimri hath conspired, and hath also slain the king. Wherefore all Israel made Omri, the captain of the host, king over Israel that day in the camp. And Omri went up from Gibbethon, and all Israel with him, and they besieged Tirzah. And it came to pass, when Zimri saw that the city was taken, that he went into the palace of the king's house, and burnt the king's house over him with fire, and died. Interesting. Taking the ship down with him. So me personally, I have a real issue with people's names and keeping things in track. I'm going to have to go back through and reread this and attach all these happenings to the people that it's happening to. But I have a vague idea of what's happening. Political turmoil and unrest happening. People going in and, if I can't have this house, nobody can. Burn it down with themselves inside. For his sins which he sinned in doing evil in the sight of the Lord, and walking in the way of Jeroboam, and in his sin which he did to make Israel to sin. Now the rest of the acts of Zimri, and his treason that he wrought, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Israel? Then were the people of Israel divided into 2 parts. Half of the people followed Tibni, the son of Ginath, to make him king, and half followed Omri. But the people that followed Omri prevailed against the people that followed Tibni, the son of Ginath. So Tibni died, and Omri reigned. So that sounds like a real civil war happening. In the 31st year of Asa, king of Judah, began Omri to reign over Israel. 12 years, 6 years reigned he in Tirzah. And he bought the hill Samaria of Shemer for 2 talents of silver, and built on the hill, and called the name of the city which he built after the name of Shemer, owner of the hill, Samaria. Interesting to think that an entire, something like Samaria could refer to a hill. It reminds me of how people talk about, taking a airplane trip over the pond in reference to the Pacific Ocean. And anyways, it's a small world after all. But Omri wrought evil in the eyes of the Lord, and did worse than all that were before him. Interesting. So the person who ended up, really Israel can't catch a break in Kings, it seems. For he walked in all the way of Jeroboam the son of Nebat, and in his sin wherewith he made Israel to sin, to provoke the Lord God of Israel to anger with their vanities. Now the rest of the acts of Omri which he did, and his might that he showed, are they not written in the book of Chronicles of the kings of Israel? I guess this is a good indication of what books I should probably be reading after I read through Kings. Maybe I should have read Chronicles first, but you don't need to read the books of the Bible in any particular order. It might help sometimes, but they really do stand alone. So Omri slept with his fathers, and was buried in Samaria, and Ahab his son reigned in his stead. And in the 38th year of Asa, king of Judah, began Ahab the son of Omri to reign over Israel. And Ahab the son of Omri reigned over Israel in Samaria 22 years. And Ahab the son of Omri did evil in the sight of the Lord, above all that were before him. this really is reminding me of what they tell us about ancient Rome, or the how you have all these corrupt leaders and they get backstabbed and they get the new leaders even worse than the one before him, and then that one dies and is replaced by one even crazier than the one before him. That's exactly what this is reminding me of. Verse 31. And it came to pass, as if it had been a light thing for him to walk in the sins of Jeroboam the son of Nebat, that he took to wife Jezebel, the daughter of Ethbaal, king of the Zidonians, and went and served Baal and worshipped him. Oh, Jezebel. Okay, so this is opening up all sorts of questions, topics of research. So Jezebel is legitimately a person, because oftentimes within Christian, I don't know, when you hear a lot of Christians talk, they'll talk about Jezebel like it's this demonic, like it's a demon. And so it very much could be a demon, and people worship demons back then, and there was hidden knowledge of demons' names, and Book of Enoch talks about all the various demons that came down and taught people about this or that. And so anyways, I just find it interesting that there was this person named Jezebel, and today we talk about Jezebel like it's this demonic thing. Could be related. Worshipping Baal, though, these people. Verse 32, and he reared up an altar for Baal in the house of Baal, which he had built in Samaria. And Ahab made a grove. And Ahab did more to provoke the Lord God of Israel to anger than all the kings of Israel that were before him. In his days did Heel the Bethelite build Jericho. He laid the foundation thereof in Abiram his firstborn, and set up the gates thereof in his youngest son Segub, according to the word of the Lord, which he spake by Joshua the son of Nun. Okay, so, man, I would say that kings, if you really wanted to understand the details of what's going on, a piece of paper handy would be great. Building your own family tree, building your own historical timelines, writing down lists of places and the peoples associated with those places. I think you could get a lot out of this. That's not my forte and not the kind of stuff I'm into, but I can see it for that it's there if you wanted to do that, and appreciate it for people that are so inclined. What intrigues me here is all the building of the groves, and because I just tend to think of groves as these natural things, like, oh, that grove over there. In my mind, it's just some area with a bunch of trees, but this makes it obvious that groves were these specifically built places for pagan type rituals. It reminds me of something that I've just been seeing every once in a while is mention. So let's see if I can think of his name. Purcell. There's an English composer, Purcell. I'm not sure exactly how to pronounce it. Purcel, I think. Anyways, it's like old English type stuff, and talking about witches and potions and brewing things and stinking places and festering. It almost seems like groves were areas that they would build to go do really nasty, dirty, satanic things. And there's something about building low places, building things underground to do wretched, demonic rituals that have very nasty smells associated with them. There's a stinking, fetid nastiness that comes with dark magic, and the smell associated with. So I think that could be part of why they're building these off places. You're not going to have you're not going to do satanic rituals like in a temple in the middle of a city, because it would just stink up the whole city. They're going and building these places, these secret hidden dark woods, and maybe even building weird structures out there to be doing their rituals. The groves, it's not just like, oh, there's this pile of trees over there. They were specifically building these wooded areas for their pagan worship. Anyways, that's just my interpretation. the way I interpret it. So let me know what you think. Hope you enjoyed this video. God bless everyone.